Testing, testing. Order, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let me put this way. Declaration of potential conflict of interest, Erica. Sue. Celeste. Mike. None for myself. Moving right along. Public comment. Did we have anybody? Oh. Oh, well, I was on the phone all day. Correspondence, there was one item of correspondence in the packet regarding the request to use the science rooms at the SRC for art studios once we get to that point. Recognition of the SEPRD Employee of the Month, Tina, okay, I'm going to say this wrong, Olea? Tina Olea. Tina joined our patron relations specialist team about 6 months ago and has, in the short amount of time, established herself as one of our top go-to staff members. She is a highly capable individual with a vast amount of skill and experience that shows in everything she does. Tina maintains amazing working relationships with all of her team members and staff from other departments. We are honored to have her as part of our district and could not be more excited for her to be our Employee of the Month. If you would like to step forward, we have some presents for you. You get this fabulous plaque. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I'm not, yeah, fist bump. It's like weird not shaking hands anymore. Thank you, Tina, for all you do. Truly appreciate it. Approval of board meeting minutes from October. Has everybody had a chance to read the meeting minutes from October?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from October 26, 21.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor signify aye. Opposed, nay. Erica?
Aye.
Sue?
Aye.
Celeste?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Come on.
Review of the financials from October. Has everybody had a chance to review the financials from October? Any questions?
I have no questions. I assume the audit is coming along and we'll have some more complete numbers in the near future.
Yeah, we turned in, I think, what is the last bit of necessary information to Rick, our auditor, today. I did want to share on the second page of the finance report is a document called the Fund Balance Report, and please note the date, which was June 30th, 2021. So essentially that was our ending fund balance for the previous fiscal year, and you can see that the fund balance was in good shape for that time of year. I think on our budget, as presented to the Budget Committee and Board in the spring, we had substantially less than that expected, but projected a healthier carry forward than we were predicting, I guess, at that point. So we're in good financial shape.
Any questions?
I have no questions today.
I do have a question because I forgot to ask Skylar about this morning. So
Go ahead, Sue.
I appreciate that the date is actually accurate on it, because that was my question. But I wanted to find out why. I understand the history I have with Broadway Field in the years that I've been on the board, why do we have an ending balance of negative 77,000 plus on the very last column?
Sue, let me double check on that answer. I mean, I have some hypothesis of why that might be the way it is, but I want to make sure that that number is accurate. I know that the beginning balance in the general fund is accurate, but I'm not sure about the other lines, line 200, 300, and 400, if those are accurate. So if it's okay, maybe I can make a note to reach out to you after I talk to Chris tomorrow or in the next
Sure.
few days.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
In terms of like the budget and then the work that the consultants have done, when are we planning to regroup on that at the workshop? Was that our original plan? Okay. Do you happen to know if, I guess what I've been interested in understanding is like how much we're spending versus like what the plan could look like for revenue? And so I don't know if maybe at the workshop you could bring kind of like, I guess expense, like more. I lost my mic.
Absolutely. Are you looking for utilities, staffing costs?
Yeah.
All those costs associated at the SRC?
Yeah, I was just thinking like when we compare kind of what they've, and I don't know what they're going to be presenting or what we'll have to look at, but yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Is your mic completely, I have some batteries. Yeah, you always seem to get the one that's finicky.
Sorry, I'm trying to silence my phone. Any further questions on the financials?
A curious question. With Staples gone, and I see that we did have some business with them, what are we doing now? Are we just doing it online?
That's a great question. I think what the majority of our business has been done online. For business accounts, they offer, I don't know if it's next day or if it's 2-day shipping, but it's very quick and really good customer service. So I anticipate we'll keep using that. It was nice to have them up there and we could go get what we needed in person on occasion, but I don't think our needs are so significant that we can't use the online option.
Okay, thank you.
So, my question has to do, and this may come with the analysis piece that Erica was talking about, but I'm recognizing that we're under, if we looked at the if we looked at our budget year and would expect that we're now about a third of the way through the budget year, that I would expect our revenue to roll in about a third, except for taxes, which we know come all at once. And so I'm seeing that we're fairly under our projection rate for instance, the projected SRC revenue. In the youth center, it looks like, and what is this one?
I noticed what you mean. We haven't had a lot of tax money come in here, but most of the money starts to come in November, and that's an October report too.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it should be changing next month.
Yeah, I think you'll see a
Reports for
healthier
next month.
total revenue percentage starting next month. We have gotten, I think, 3 or 4 distributions of the tax funds that we typically receive around this time of year. And then the other thing, I think, we weren't, from the start of the fiscal year until a few weeks ago, usage at the building was pretty limited just to our programs. Now we have rentals and other things occurring just about every day. So I think you'll start to see that increase a little bit. I'm not sure if we'll get to that budgeted amount of $203,000. And I think when we were developing the budget, maybe that was a little bit loftier of a goal than probably was realistic. But I also think there's some untapped revenue in terms of some of the property value and the partnerships that we may be exploring down the road after we get our strategic plan kind of in better focus.
Well, and I think, and this may come through some of the analysis that we also are able to get from our partners at
SFA.
SFA, yeah. You know, the Sunset Recreation Center, for instance, like, is required for some of the revenue that we have coming in for the youth center. And so how do those interplay with each
Yeah.
other, and how do we, I mean, we are using up a fair amount of the footprint of the building
Sure.
for youth center activities. And so, in some ways, the SRC is the building itself, right?
Yeah.
So sort of the difference between how the building makes money, like through rents, versus how programming makes money, is something I think maybe we need to drill down on.
Sure, I agree. Yeah, I guess the other large ticket item in the SRC budget would be that rental revenue that we receive from Northwest Regional, and I don't think we've received any of that yet, just because see here they're just getting to the end, I think, of their first quarter. So I think that'll be a substantial chunk of that revenue generated, and then with the other activities and rentals, hopefully we'll get closer to that bigger number.
Well, and I'm kind of viewing that line item with kind of a grain of salt until we really get the plan in place. And which I think, you know, with our meeting next month will really help us iron that out and how we're going to start generating those extra funds.
It seems like some of the others, like aquatics, is pretty high though.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think we're doing well in the other areas. Yeah, aquatics has been strong. Some of the other ones are performing better than expected. I think, yeah, once we get that rental revenue accounted for and then our taxes, I think that 12.67% will look a little better in the months coming.
Do we have a motion to approve financials?
Move that we approve financials for October 2021.
Thank you, Celeste. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mike. All in favor signify aye, opposed nay. Erica?
aye.
Sue?
Aye.
Celeste?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Old business, we had nothing.
No old
Nope.
business
Okay.
today.
New business, Clatsop County Court Partnership. That's a new one for me.
Can I ask a question about old business?
Yeah,
Is that okay?
sure.
And it's in lieu of the letter of correspondence. How are we doing with 4-H or the science rooms?
Yeah, so it's the perspective of staff that the 4-H proposal to use the SRC is not moving forward at this time. I don't have really validated information to confirm that from them, but we had kind of gone back and forth for several weeks about an appropriate space at the SRC, and they had a couple of rooms that they were really hoping for, and to be honest, we didn't feel like those rooms were the best rooms for their program and for the district. And so we had offered them a different room that we felt was adequate for the purposes described, and they didn't seem to be as interested in that room, and that's kind of where the conversation left off. I think we offered them a really a more than fair rental rate and some other opportunities, but it seemed like they kind of had their hearts set on this one or two particular rooms, and when we offered them a different room, it seemed like they maybe decided to look elsewhere or not pursue the program. I'm not sure.
I know Mary is also currently long-term subbing at the middle school, so it may be that this has to wait. She's subbing at the middle school, long-term sub.
But I need to talk to her. Thank you.
New business, Clatsop County Court Partnership.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, does the board want me to rearrange the order of topics, or should we just press on? I know we have one director who has to leave in a few minutes. It's up to you. I'm happy. I think A and B will proceed pretty quickly. C is a little lengthier presentation with
Erica, which one are you interested in?
Well, yeah, I was actually interested in A and
Okay,
B. So
great.
I could-
So we have been working on a little arrangement with the Clatsop County court system. They are in need partly because of COVID, but also just I think they're realizing maybe that this is a better option for some of their folks. So they were awarded a grant to provide some technology, and what we are going to provide is private space for people in South County to participate in court from our location here at the Bob Chisholm. It'll be during our business hours, and they'll again provide the technology. I think it's iPads for the people to come. They'll check in with a staff member. They'll have a private area to do their court proceedings, and then they won't necessarily have to travel up there or rely on home internet or home devices, which may not work quite as good. So just wanted to share that with the board. I think it's a really good use of our space and time, and grateful for the partnership.
Is that new?
It is
'Cause
new, yeah.
I know this space has been used when I had to testify for a child.
Oh, yeah, I'm not aware of, at least in the 6 or so years that I've been with the district, of us having a partnership or an arrangement with them, but
And
I
it
know
was-
they use the convention center at times for some court stuff, but this is a little different just for folks that don't have reliable internet or device at home to partake in court proceedings. They can do so here without having to travel up north.
It was a very good thing.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we can offer that.
Well, I also think it's a really, is that something that's happening here or at SRC or
Happening here.
here?
Yeah.
And do we have the ability to provide privacy in those cases?
We do, yeah. So all of the appointment times will be prearranged, and we'll make sure that we can use one of our meeting rooms or the conference room. And if we can't, then we'll work with the court to reschedule it at a time where the person participating can have that privacy.
Yeah, I'm also wondering if this is a place where we might provide support to families, particularly families that are involved with the child welfare system, and be able to
Yeah.
provide online visitation through DHS. Again, because sometimes the transportation is not reliable to get back and forth to
Sure.
Astoria. So, and I'd be happy to take a lead on looking at that.
Yeah, let me maybe connect the three of us and see if that's a need and how we can support those families. I agree. Any other questions, or I'll proceed to the warming shelter partnership. It's a mouthful. As you know, I shared, and you probably read a little bit about this. There is a movement by a couple of nonprofits, including Classic Community Action and Helping Hands, with partnership from the city and SEPRD to provide a solution for the houseless population in our area, especially during the cold and wet months. They were able to find a space off the highway in a facility that was once used by Helping Hands, and they're hoping to start providing that shelter for those nights where it is cold or wet. It'll be called a low barrier shelter, and so there is some rules in place as far as behavior and who they can accept when they're there. But the district's position is that this is a good thing for lots of different reasons, and I'm really happy that they found a great location for it. It was challenging because I think we all wanted to support this opportunity or support this movement, but there were some very significant challenges with using the SRC for this purpose. Our role at this point is simply to provide shower passes to those participants at the shelter. They'll be able to come and use our shower service, which we already have, but they'll be given a voucher when they leave. We provide about 13 hours of possible shower time for folks to come. It's in the early morning and then 2 nights a week. And we try to set those times where there won't be, the pool isn't used as heavily and there's not a lot of children around, especially children that are unattached to a parent or guardian. So that will continue going on. It's just I anticipate that shower program will probably get a little more direct use than it has in the past. And then the other thing that we'll be working to find solutions with the other partners is how to provide some sort of food to the folks. The goal is to provide them with a sack lunch or something, sack dinner for when they check in. And we'll be working with our foundation and possibly with our nutrition coordinator to figure out exactly how to do that. And then when they go in the morning, they'll have a small breakfast with some fruit or a granola bar, something like that. So I think it's a great opportunity for us to invest a small amount, support this, and partner with, like I said, the other entities in the city to find a solution. There's probably only about 15 beds available in this space right now, but I think if we can get through the winter and learn some lessons and maybe look for other spaces if the need exceeds what's available right now.
Do we have any, in our participation in that partnership, which I applaud, by the way, that we're partnering in that, do we have any indication about the need and how many individuals are looking for shelter space? And then my second question is, given our commitment to children and youth, do we have any understanding about the population that includes children and youth?
I don't have an answer to the second question, but I'm happy to talk to the folks that are probably a little more informed about this topic than I am, or connect you with them. I think as far as the first question, I know when speaking with Alan, and he knows, I think, this population very well, there's over 500 individuals in this community that are homeless that they know of, and there's probably much significant amount more than that. And it's hard to know this time of year exactly how many there are because of the transient nature of that lifestyle, unfortunately. So I know that the need will likely exceed what we have available.
I'm wondering if there's any kind of accommodation that we could make for children and youth who might be in that situation with a parent, to fast track them into entry into our child care programs, or
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a great
sort of
point.
instant scholarship kind of things and drop-ins. So
Yeah.
even if they aren't enrolling in advance, that we acknowledge that because of the transient nature, that if we can offer a sort of a drop-in
Yeah.
for families in that situation, it might allow parents time to go find work or
Sure.
to get housing.
I think that's a great point. I'm trying to kind of think of, I know there's going to be staff from the two agencies that are going to be handling intake, and maybe we can provide them with information on our programs and services that might be applicable, like those ones that you mentioned. I think that's a really good point, and they can share that with those folks, or maybe connect us quicker than if they had to come over here and sort of find out for themselves.
Great.
How is our staffing levels for youth programs? Like, do we have openings in youth programs?
We do not have openings. We may have an opening or two in preschool. We don't have any openings in the after school program, but we are actually in a little bit of a positive uptick in staffing. We've had a few really good applicants in youth programs and aquatics and maintenance and our patron relations specialist position. So for a time, we were really struggling. Now we're kind of seeing a little bit of a positive trend in that area. So still some work to do to expand and move, get like a third preschool classroom or another set of after-school kids in there, but getting closer.
Excellent.
I kind of hoped that we would be using the showers at the SRC, which have outdoor accesses and so on. I thought that would be useful, but apparently that's not the direction. But I'm concerned because we've done showers for the homeless in the past, and we've had trouble with sex offenders being identified, and in the mix of families coming and going, and then we ended that program. That was under Justin Cutler. How are you going to manage the building with a lot of the people that are bringing along a lot of baggage and trash and animals? We could end up holding the bag with having to manage people's belongings, which we are not allowed to throw away if we encounter them or recover them on our property.
Sure.
So I'm wondering just how you're going to manage it.
Yeah. So let me address the SRC showers, because we did consider that, and even for a time, Clatsop Community Action was really interested in using the showers at the SRC. I think given the status of the SRC and of the locker room space, we weren't really comfortable with that as a good fit right now, but it doesn't mean that we wouldn't revisit it in the future. We do have some protocols in place for handling those folks that need showers and dealing with some of the potential challenges that that might accompany them as far as their personal belongings or pets and things. And for the most part, we've had really only positive experiences. There has been a couple of challenging experiences, but our staff received some training in how to deal with those situations. And for the most part, I feel really confident in the abilities of staff to interact with that group. The worst possible thing that has happened thus far is just those folks maybe occupying the family changing room and staying, a little bit probably too long. But we do have a key for that space, and we, have kind of a procedure of knocking on the door and giving them some warning, and then kind of helping them move along a little bit. And unfortunately, this isn't a problem that we can solve, but I think providing a hot shower and a towel is something that really will help their health and what's the word I'm looking for? Not sanitary, but there's cleanliness, hygienics, and gets them some positive interaction with human beings that they may not be able to have. And maybe, hey, they see the pool or they see some of our services and they desire to be a patron, and that can really help somebody, I believe, in using some of our programs. So certainly there's probably going to be some challenging experiences to be had, but I think it's something that, like I said, with proper training and good protocols in place, we're going to try and embrace and help those folks as much as we can.
I would hate to see any, we have to kind of mitigate any possibility of damaging or people smashing sinks or toilets, and basically which would shut down the pool for,
Sure.
until we could restore that. But I've been following the homeless plan presentation with City Council a week ago and their workshop outcomes, and I can already see, it's very evident to many people, that the public restrooms, which we own the property and the land underneath the chamber and the visitor center, if the city starts closing down that car park over on 10th and Mechanicum, I don't want to see our parking lot turning into a car camp. It's already turning into one. We've got RVs, which I've tracked, and they're showing up camping out there several days, week after week, at one time or another. And I don't want to see any of that migrate any further than it is to the SRC. And I'd like to gain some understanding of why the property is being used for this free parking for day dry camping and people just hanging out, particularly with vehicles. I think I noticed one weekend, I think it was a PBO maybe 3 weeks ago, that there was a large RV that did not leave, and people were having to park all around it. And I'm worried about encroachment on space that we need for our clients. And I'm wondering how this car camping thing is going to progress. But it's pretty clear that the visitorship to the city is diminished because of the transit problem. And I wouldn't want to see the people attending our programs and facilities not be coming either because of discomfort. I can understand the problem, and it's a big one, but we're here to support the district, and I'd like to protect the district in every way we can.
I appreciate that. Maybe I can offer a little bit of insight. So to be completely honest, I think our staff recognizes that it is a challenge. It's a challenging area. It's one that we haven't necessarily had to deal with before acquiring this property. Yes, there's a challenge to be confronted, and we just have kind of delayed taking on that challenge because of other things in front of us right now. But the folks that park in that section of the SRC, they do acquire a permit from the city of Seaside. They have to go to the Visitors Bureau. And there are sometimes folks that park there without acquiring that permit, and we have legal grounds to ask them to move or to call the police, and police will interact with them to ask them to move. And we have tried doing that. We've also worked with the city to kind of communicate our schedule of events at the SRC. So when we do have, for instance, PBL tournaments, there really shouldn't be RVs that are parked there that aren't part of the tournament. And I think they've done that. That's been a fairly recent change within the last couple of weeks. So kind of a new challenge for us, but one that we're going to be working on and trying to make sure we manage, because I think we're cognizant of the concerns that you have, Mike, and share those concerns with you, especially with an entrance to, our preschool and our youth program so close to that part of the property, as well as the Northwest Regional ESD students that are using that part of the building.
Thank you.
Did I understand correctly, though, that the city, who provides the permits?
Typically in the past, it's always gone through the Visitors Bureau, and so when we took ownership of the property, we asked them to kind of continue that. We didn't feel like we were as equipped and that people know to go to the Visitors Bureau or the Chamber of Commerce building to acquire their permit for that staying. Now, they're not supposed to be sleeping in their vehicles. That's for vehicles that are, they maybe are staying in a hotel or staying in a vacation property, but that property doesn't have space for their larger oversized vehicles.
I've seen people camping in those vehicles.
And we have too.
And I think if there's a permit, there should be a cost, and I think we should be paid for it.
Okay.
Well, that was my next question, is whether there is a charge.
There isn't a
Currently,
charge.
There's no charge.
No.
And whether or not the education is going on about what the rules are around that is, I think,
not
would be another
posted.
piece. Yeah.
There's nothing posted. I've always wondered what was going on.
Yeah, I think it's easier for us to firm up boundaries and policies than it is to be lax and recover later once the problem's out of hand. So I agree with Mike. I think this is something that we could save ourselves a much larger headache by some proactive measures, yeah.
I'd kind of been holding back because I know we've gone through an appraisal of our property over there that this visitor center and the chamber occupy. And then also I don't want to change the subject line, but, we haven't got a certificate of occupancy for the SRC. And I'm wondering, are our hands tied about any kind of ordinance that we might require? Do we have the right to enforce, our rules on those properties?
I think we absolutely do. Yeah, I don't see the two as being tied to each other, but that's something that we could work on if the board would like us to develop a policy or an ordinance or something. I think maybe the first step, I think, would be to transferring responsibility for managing this permitting process or opportunity to park there from the city to district staff. And then we know who's parked there, and we know the vehicles and the description of the vehicles, and we can interact with those folks. And if they're parked there without that permission or doing things that they're not legally supposed to be doing, like camping, then that's when we'd have the ability to work with the city to have them ask them to vacate.
Yeah. I also think,
Sorry.
I just
sorry.
I
Go
just
ahead, Jim.
I didn't understand something about the two different things. So who are the two populations? Is that?
Sorry.
I'm way down here. I'm just trying
Yeah,
to.
I'm not sure. I guess.
I don't know. Things were the, whether or not our occupancy permit for the SRC has to do with our ability to enforce
Okay.
illegal parking
Thank you.
on the,
I
in
appreciate
the
that.
parking lot.
I do think as far as like the homelessness that are kind of camping there, once the shelter opens, and we can kind of direct folks that way, I think that will help that situation. But, yeah.
And is the shower, does this start December 1?
The warming shelter.
No, the shower vouchers, are we starting that now?
So they've actually been running for probably like 6 or 7 months. We ran them before COVID, and then once we reopened after COVID, we didn't have that opportunity available just because there was a lot of unknowns. We re-engaged the program about 6 or 7 months ago and distributed passes to our some of our nonprofit partners that work with that population. Now I just think the passes will be a little more available to folks and will be out there. And you don't have to have a pass to participate. You can come, anybody can come and use the showers at the pool during those times. The pass just eliminates the cost, which is, I think, $2 without a towel and $3 with a towel. So now we're just providing that service complimentary for those folks that are staying at the shelter.
Any other discussion about the warming shelter, or should we move on to the cost recovery presentation? Moving on. Thank you, Skylar.
You're welcome. You're going to have to give me just a sec to get this.
Hey, Skylar, have you gotten anybody calling you saying, hey, yeah, I'm volunteering for Thursday?
I've got many people calling me, yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Plenty of people. Oh, sorry.
I mean, I've been telling people.
I appreciate that. Yeah, spread the word. Lots of opportunities.
Do we have dog food? And I asked that because I heard something about the food bank has dog food.
Well, that was all at your prompting, Sue, so I appreciate that. We felt like it was important to make sure that people's pets were provided with some food, so we are going to make sure that we have that.
Can I have some to donate, if I may? When do you want it? Where?
You can bring it tomorrow or on Thanksgiving morning, okay?
Okay.
Yeah. Well, this isn't what I need. Huh. I need it to swap. Does anybody know how to? Well, I need like that page on my screen and the big version. No, that's not it. Cool. Well, I don't have my notes though. That's gonna mess me up, Catherine. Gotta have my notes, otherwise I'll ramble.
Would you like a copy of the presentation?
Oh, yes.
You good?
Oh, Bryant. No. It's bigger than that. All right, I'm going to try this again. Oh, there we go. Okay, thank you. Sorry, appreciate your patience. So, originally we were going to talk about cost recovery and our work with SFA and Scott Edwards Architecture, both at our December workshop. I felt like since we had the cost recovery information available to us that we could lighten the load from that meeting by presenting some of that information tonight. I don't think this is going to be a one and done topic for us. This is just kind of updating the board and giving them the information that we've received. So I'm hopeful that you'll find this presentation to be informative and helpful as we move forward on this this important topic that's been discussed for several years, I think, by the district. But I kind of want to set the table a little bit. So just sort of start with how this happened. About a year ago, I participated in what was called a master class in cost recovery. And it was a very informative thing. It was with the same folks that helped us with this project, but was kind of turned on to it by some colleagues that had worked with this group and found their experience to be really positive. And at that class, one of the things that we studied was this example from Portland Parks and Rec. And you probably have read about Portland Parks and Rec. It's honestly, it's a world-renowned agency in terms of their inclusivity and providing access to citizens of Portland. But there was a time a couple of years ago where they were overstretched and their budget could not match their programs and services and facilities that they were operating. So they went through a significant round of layoffs and cuts and closing facilities, and it was really quite sad. Now they're growing again because they recently passed a bond. But this sentence was really significant to me, and I highlighted it on the screen, but you may have a hard time reading it. It says, the shortfall is largely caused by personnel costs increasing faster than revenues generated by the Bureau, the FAQ sheet says. More than a quarter of its revenues come from fees for programs which the City Council has kept low to encourage public participation. So that it was kind of through that lens that I found this topic to be really applicable to the district, because I think, at least during my time and probably before, I think we've been asked to grow, do more, provide this service, expand this service, increase hours, keep kind of growing. And all during that time, our tax rate, which is what we rely on substantially, stays the same. Now we can grow with program fees and other ways, but typically every time you add a program or a position or something, increase in hours, you're kind of making your dollar stretch a little bit further. And so it just kind of hit home a little bit of our need to examine this. So I want to just share a little bit about the timeline and process that we went through. We were able to enter into an agreement with 110% cost recovery. That's the name of the contractor that provided this service for us. And we entered with, in what's called a cohort, with two other park and rec agencies in our state, the cities of Albany and Corvallis. They have done this cohort model in other states and once previously in our state, and I think it had worked really well. It saved us a lot of money because we were able to work with the other cohorts at their same, kind of at one pace, and reduce what would have been a more substantial cost for us in the contract. So all totaled, the contract was less than $6,000, which I think is an outstanding value. From April through June, the district staff inputted data. We used data and financial information from our 2019 calendar or fiscal year, which was a little tricky because obviously we were shut down for a fair part of that year. But we felt like the most recent data, that was important to have it. From July through September, we had weekly meetings with the consultants, and we developed our service categories, which you'll hear a little bit more about here in a moment. And then October and November, for the last month or two, we've had drafts of the information that you're seeing tonight, and then final versions presented to us. I want to just, yeah. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, I appreciate you catching that. 2019. So the previous when I printed those slides and sent them to you, I had forgotten that we ended up using 2019. We were considering using 2018 data, but we ended up using 2019. And I guess this will come up later, but I should point it out here that we hadn't acquired the SRC in 2019, so that was a significant difference. Just looking at the data, there was 644 different activities that were included in the data set. So all of this data had to be inputted into basically into a spreadsheet that was shared with the contractor and us. During that course of the year, we had 14,619 participations or participants, and provided over 26,000 hours of programming, or 156 continuous weeks. I just think that that's pretty interesting and amazing, I think, for a small district. And you can see the largest activities by number were beginner aquatics, drop-in monitored access, and I'll talk more about these. These are kind of an introduction to the service categories. The scope of services, their program is divided into 5 phases that occurred virtually. At times in their past, they have had some in-person, but that was one way to keep our costs lower, is because we were able to do all of this virtually and well equipped to do it. Also included webinars, interactive digital work sessions, and one-on-one meetings. So the first phase was staff education and training. We invited our entire management team and some other key staff to participate from the finance department, from different key areas, just so that we would have broad representation of what we were going to be doing. And the consultants offered us an introduction on financial management and cost recovery in the public sector. We also just kind of got an overview of the philosophy of cost recovery, which, again, I'll talk more about, but you'll probably have it becoming clear. It's the premise of if we get $100 in tax revenue, how much of that are we recovering? How much of our own revenue are we generating? So again, that's going to come up continually. The second phase was service category development. So we again had staff representing all areas to develop our service categories. I'll talk a lot more about that in a couple of slides. We did a cost of service analysis, so that's that data input. So that was the heavy lifting phase of the process. Darren, essentially by himself, with the help of some others, inputted the data and helped us get accurate numbers as we worked forward. And during that time, we had weekly check-ins with the consultants, working through some of the questions and issues that we were having. We participated in phase 4, which was the beneficiary of service workshop. So that was actually really fun as this project kind of started to come together. Our team ranked the service categories in terms of their overall community benefit and their individual benefit, and I'll share a little bit more about that. And then that kind of helped us sort of set the formation for building the cost recovery model. And then this 5th phase, we've unveiled the cost of service. We have the tools that we need to make some changes, should we choose to. And then working with our elected officials and our staff to kind of figure out the next steps. So during that master class that I participated in, this was a kind of a continuum model that was presented to all of us that were participating. And it really helped, again, kind of strike my, how I like to learn with the explanation. So something that I think I had sort of thought about many times before, but this is just an understanding and a visualization of what our agency and staff have been practicing, hopefully, over the course of time, but hasn't necessarily been laid out in a really comprehensive and thorough manner. The idea is that agencies like ours are typically subsidized by the public, and part of our inherent mission is to serve that public in an efficient, inclusive, and sustainable manner. Agencies are tasked with providing the entry-level skills and programs to enhance the quality of life for all, or as many as possible that choose to participate. So in the lower left-hand corner, you see the terms common good, and then as you move to the right, you see individualized on the x-axis, and then on the left, you see the y-axis, and that's represented by the high subsidy, low cost recovery, all the way up to the top left-hand corner, which says low subsidy, high cost recovery. So common good programs represented in this matrix as being essential, community-wide, having far-reaching impact and interest, and being accessible to all, among other characteristics, are near the access point. Whereas individual programs, the ones up here in this corner, are more discretionary. They have a limited impact. They're typically more exclusive. They're not entry-level programs. They're at the other end of the spectrum. And according to this model, which is, I think, an effective way of processing this information in some of these decisions, they should be subsidized less by the general fund of the district. So we're going to revisit that continuum here in a minute, but here's what, working with the consultants, what staff came up with as our service level categories. And I know this is probably a little bit difficult to read, but you have it all in your materials, and I'm going to make sure this is shared and probably post it on our website once I find the best place for it. But there's 10 categories beginning on the left. These are just in alphabetical order. So the top in the blue is the name of the category. So we have beginner activities, community events, and so on. The next column or row is the description, a general description. So for beginner activities, the general description is that this skill level is learned over multiple sessions. And then in the bottom, in the blue, you have some examples of those beginner activities. So Start Smart Sports, swim lessons, Learn to Surf Camp. These are entry-level programs that are designed for somebody that doesn't necessarily know how to do these things to learn those skills. And you have community events, drop-in monitored access. I'm not going to go through each one, but all of our programs had to fit into one of these categories. So as we developed the categories, we couldn't exclude a program. We had to find a box for each program to sit in. After development and review and discussion, we then had a workshop to determine where the category should fall on that spectrum. So looking again back at our model, where do each of these service level categories fall on that? Staff individually ranked the categories based on which we felt like was most deserving of a higher subsidy and which were most deserving of a lower subsidy, and thus should be approached with perhaps a higher cost recovery goal. So here's our ranking as it came out. The big number on the bottom represents, the lower the number represents what we felt like were the common good programs, if you will. So beginner activities, enrichment activities, I guess even non-monitored open access were identified as being more common good activities, as opposed to rentals and semi-private instruction were more discretionary. And here's the same chart just with the categories ranked. From left to right, you'll see them as they increase in value. So how does that play out? Well, here's our model again. And you'll see now, here's the chart with our service level categories that are worked through. So we identified non-monitored activities as being the closest point to the common good that we could find.
I'm sorry, it's
Hi.
bothering me. I think you should have this. I mean, I'm listening to everything you said, Skylar, and it's causing me pain that he's straining.
And then as you go up on this blue arrow, community events, beginner activities, enrichment activities, and so on, until you get to the top where we had merchandise sales, rentals, and private and semi-private instruction. So then it got interesting. We had to work through an activity to come up with a cost recovery goal. It was a range that we came up with because we felt like it was important to be somewhat flexible with our goals at this point as we work through the process. So here's that continuum again with the service categories and the cost recovery range goal down at the bottom. So you'll see, for instance, we came up with a range of 10 to 25% of cost recovery for community events. So that means that after a community event, we should be able to evaluate the full cost, the true cost of that event, and our goal as a district, or as a staff at least right now, is that we recovered 10 to 25% of that true cost, and so on and so forth. And you can see that the range goes up as the activity becomes more individualized and more discretionary. So some of the things at the top, private and semi-private instruction, so like private swim lessons, we believe that we should be cost recovering 75 to 125% of the program cost for us. And this includes all program costs, including the facility, staffing, utilities, training that staff, all of the true costs. That's, I think, why this program is really important, is because we had to input so much of our revenue and expenses in order to get that more accurate number. This chart is really helpful. You could probably look at it until your head spun a little bit, at least I did. But essentially, you'll see on the left side of this black column, you'll see where our average cost recovery and median cost recovery fall right now in our service categories. Then you see that compared to the range, the goals that we established. So the range 20 to 25% for beginner activities, for example. And then that last column on the right is how far the district is currently away from hitting their cost recovery goal. So for something like beginner activities, where our goal is only 20 to 25%, we are only 4% away from that cost recovery goal. So not too far away, at least in my opinion. Whereas something like rentals, we have a cost recovery goal of 75 to 125%. And so our current cost recovery model is far below what we'd actually like to be generating.
How is that?
How is that?
Like, if I rented the pool for a birthday party, so I had 10 swimmers, but
Sure.
I pay a bulk fee to rent the pool, because I've done that once upon a long time ago.
Yeah.
How come the how come the midpoint is so low?
Because we're not charging enough.
Well, I would say for the pool, we might be able to charge a lot closer to what we actually need to realize the full cost recovery. But we have some other facilities that we aren't able to, or we just don't, including the Bob Chisholm Community Center, the Broadway Field, for example. So this includes, the rental includes all of those other spaces.
So when you developed the true cost, did that take into account the multi-use of the buildings? Did you consider, like, were the shared usage of the facility space
Yes.
factored in? Okay.
And I wish I could explain how it lumped those into the different places, because that's kind of a mystery to us too, but I know that it did, because we had worked through that and asked that same question before.
So this gives us a picture of what a basic cost would be for an in-district user. How will we interpret this when it comes to our out-of-district, in-district fees? Oh, I'm sorry. You might have heard that. I wanted to know how this, if this was a baseline for in-district fees, and/or how will this translate into out-of-district rates?
So the folks that we work with, they understand our model and that we're a special district, and they've worked with other special districts before. I guess the short answer is that it doesn't account for it, Mike, but I guess from my perspective, whether the participants are in district or out of district, it doesn't necessarily matter for this purpose, because we have to look at the bottom line of what we generated from each program and then compare that to the true cost of offering that program. Yeah. And so if we have 100 out-of-district residents and they're going to pay that 33% more, then the true revenue generation is going to look a little different than if we have 100 in-district residents, right?
I would say almost it's like the in-district would be the minimum and the out-of-district would be the maximum.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why we did the range also, is because we wanted a little flexibility, I guess, as we are working through this.
But I suppose what you're looking at in this is the comparison of taxpayer subsidized activities versus other revenue. So whether other revenue is from in-district people, out-of-district people, or grants, I would assume, or donations, right? Like, so you're looking at how to recover money regardless of the source, right? Yeah. So I really love the idea of this construct, and I love a framework like this, and so I applaud the investment that it's taken for staff, and I'm sure a ton of your time to figure this out. I do have a question about the prioritization I'm a little bit surprised, to be honest.
Sure.
So,
You want to go back to like this?
common good versus individualized. Yeah,
Okay.
and so first of all, I'm a little bit confused about the distinction between community events and special events, and why those have
Sure.
their own categories with such different marks for cost recovery. So that was a little bit surprising to me.
Yes.
And also, I mean, when I think of what the Park and Rec District, and this is just my personal, this would be my personal assessment of like, when I think about taxpayer dollars and what they go to, I think it's probably mostly the beginner activities, the enrichment activities, and the drop-in monitored activities. Like, to me, those would be the,
Yeah.
what I think most taxpayers maybe think their tax dollars are going to. And so I'm just curious about the process of staff to prioritize.
Sure. So let's maybe bite off one of those at a time if you want, if you can remember those, Celeste. Let's start with the service level categories. So I think for us, we looked at the, let me see here. So we looked at community events as being really gateways to all of our programs at the district and being ones that were completely low barrier in participation. Like things like the egg hunt, the farmer's market, the fall fun fest. Those are events that we really want in our entire community to participate in, and they don't need, there's no select set of skills or prerequisites that you would need to complete it. They're really as accessible as we feel like we can probably be and as inclusive. Whereas the special event category was more for things that might be a little more niche, things like the turkey trot, for example. It's not going to be in everybody's wheelhouse or capabilities or interest to run or walk a 5K. So that's kind of why we differentiated between those two. I remember that we had these same questions as a staff, and I think this model made sense to our consultants who, they kind of had done this with so many other agencies before. They sort of encourage that differentiation because it's really, to compare, I'll just use those two examples, the egg hunt with turkey trot, they're really two pretty different events, right? In terms of what they're going to offer. So, but having said that, and I think this goes for your other questions, all of this is editable. This is what we're coming back to the board, and I think there's going to be some further discussion. And if we decide, hey, we really feel like this should be somewhere else or should have a different cost range, then I think that's great.
Yeah, it is a great starting point. No
So I know that wasn't all of your questions, was it?
This is very much like the rating, the greatest personal benefit.
Exactly.
It will be a more costly program.
Yep.
But the better the community benefit or the group benefit, then the lower.
Yep.
And they will probably receive more subsidy. But I just want to clarify one thing. When I ever see this number 2018, this year, is that a continued typo from the?
Yes, so it's 2019.
2019?
Yep.
Okay.
Celeste, did we get through? I know you're.
No, that was exactly right.
Okay.
So I think having some insight to that is really helpful, and I think as this board has had several conversations about strategic planning, and I think this is an excellent framework to have those discussions and helps with data-driven strategic planning instead of personal preferences. So I really appreciate.
I think we feel like that too. And to be fair, when we were coming up with both the service categories and in these ranges and prioritizing where on the continuum things should fall, it was a very lively discussion, and we had staff that completely disagreed. And healthy debate and discussion amongst the staff about where things should fall. So I think that's pretty healthy and normal for this kind of activity. I want to just show a little bit more about the data inputted so you can see the percentage of total subsidy that was available for the district in 2019. You can see that by and large that subsidy went to primarily two programs, to drop-in monitored access, well, not two programs, but two categories that have a lot of programs. Drop-in monitored access received the most, and then youth enrichment received the second most, with rentals being third, and then enrichment for aquatics was fourth. So even though some of these other categories might fall higher on the continuum, they're not subsidized with an amount that's so substantial, right? So I think that's an important consideration, is like you were saying, Celeste, what do people know us for? And which of those programs give us the opportunity to generate some of our own revenue, right? And then, kind of being strategic about how we assign a goal within that kind of working framework. So this slide sort of shows, and I'll try to explain it, I guess, if you need it, but I think the most subsidized programs that you see in those three categories on the left would be things like lap swim, preschool, the rentals of valued community spaces like the Bob Chisholm Community Center, Broadway Field, and even the pool. And then our preschool would fall in that area in our after-school program. I wanted to just highlight, I think, what are the 5 service level categories that we're most out of line currently with our goals. And this is probably more food for thought, but and you could do some of this homework yourself, but I especially want to, I guess, suggest a few things that are at the bottom, that last row. So for competitive activities, that is 68% kind of out of line right now. So what could we do in those areas? And these are just ideas that have come up in our discussions and trainings with the consultants, but you can always increase registration costs. I think that has to be done the right way with community input and usually using a stepped approach where it's not just, wham bam, here you go. It's kind of phased in over a series of time. Sometimes outsourcing some of those competitive activities to third-party providers can really ease the burden on your subsidy, right? Because you're not subsidizing the program. The third party can charge what they need to charge to get by, but you're not necessarily bearing the overhead of a competitive activity. For rentals, that program is 65% out of whack with our goals. So I think some challenges that are in front of the district and the board, it would be, well, obviously we're going to have more current data that maybe reflects better or worse, I don't know, depending on how the SRC numbers work in. But I think the biggest thing is consider revising some of those agreements that we have with this facility and with the Broadway Field. And then the other suggestions are down there below. There's always increased registration costs. There's utilizing different sponsorship structure for special events. And then the last column is the drop-in monitored access. So primarily when I think about that, I'm thinking about access to the facilities at the Sunset Pool. So the lap swim, open swim, using the fitness room. It's pretty heavily subsidized right now. Pools are never going to be money makers. They're not really designed that way. Our pool is wonderful and it's been supported by the district over time. But I think looking at an updated fee structure to reflect, really our true cost of service and our current expenses is something that I think we need to keep on not on the back burner, but on the front burner here as we move forward to the new fiscal year. I just put together, I guess, some key deliverables. So I think this project, we're through with our consultants' work. We are able to hire them back to help us with implementation or with other suggestions, and that's fairly common for their work with an agency. But I guess some of my key deliverables is that we now have this accurate information for assessment of true program costs, and it's based on our current performance with analysis insights and budget projections. And to be honest, I think we're closer than we thought as far as some of what we were hoping for. Alignment, I think that this is a really important principle. So this is not a Schuyler decision. This is not simply probably just a board decision. This is a staff and board working together and involving the public, using the public as a sounding board and getting feedback, I think is really important. And I've learned a little bit about how some other agencies that had to implement significant pricing structure revisions and increases, how they did that. So I'm happy to share some of that information. And then I think just having this be a larger discussion about the role or the need for cost recovery and sustainability for the district. And then as far as that next steps, we talked a little bit about that, but those are kind of I think what needs to happen. So anyways, try to be brief. Really grateful for this opportunity to work with these folks, and it was a really good process. We have lots of work to do. We really just got these results within the last 10 days or so. So to be honest, staff have been given this information, but I haven't shared this information with any directives or anything like that. So looking for questions, feedback, and then what do we do now from the board? Sue, I saw your hand was raised.
I was curious about two things. One question a few ways back. We're still not charging any kind of fee for the beach wheelchairs, right?
That's correct.
Do we look for, like, your opportunity to donate to continue this program? Is there anything like that available? Because I know it's so appreciated.
Yeah. Yeah, we could, I haven't honestly thought about that, but we could ask for donations or perhaps implement a small rental fee or something. I don't
And
know,
like-
I think we did want to be careful of that, excuse me, because most of the other, in fact, I think all of the other either agencies or municipalities that offer that up and down the coast, I don't know of any that charge. So I'm not sure if that's a great message to send to folks that need to use that.
Weren't the beach wheelchairs donated?
Yes,
And
they
the
were.
lockers as well?
The lockers were a result of a grant that was a joint grant between the city and ourselves.
So realistically, our cost for just the beach wheelchair program would be staff time.
It's just staff time, and then if something goes wrong, which, I
Maintenance.
mean, we had the issue this last summer with one of the chairs, but yeah, it is a pretty low expensed program,
I think-
low expense
I
program.
think that one falls down in the greatest good
Sure.
category for me.
Because I'm more curious that, we're promoting, I think it's such a great program, and I think more people need to hear about it. And, I know that I know there are 3 bins. Didn't we have one of the bikes, one of them stolen?
Yeah, but we've since replaced it. Our insurance provider helped us
Right.
replace the wheelchair, so I think we're back to 3. I'm not sure, I don't think we're really offering the program right now for obvious reasons, but yeah, we're ready to go once the weather starts cooperating.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Yeah, so they can rent them from here. They can call or just come in and make a reservation typically. Sometimes there's one available right on the spot, but we really recommend people call ahead. And then the beach wheelchairs are stored down in the convention center parking lot. There's some large storage facilities, and we give them a code, and they take the beach wheelchair out of the locker and then return it when they're done and let us know when they're back so that we can make sure it's there and rent it again. Yeah.
And, the reservation, I think, is more important, like in the summer, because we do only have 3.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
I think one of the things that I'm interested in when we look at this, and I don't know if this was true of the other districts that these consultants had worked with, but, the load of most of our costs is carried by the taxpayers of our district, right? And we have a heavy tourist population, and I definitely think we should be recovering more costs from tourist users than from people who are already paying through their tax dollars. So I think that should be a piece of the formula as we move forward. I also think I'd encourage us to think about, when we're thinking about fees, that we also consider other alternate means to covering costs, including grants. I mean, I know that that's come up several times, but I think we should look at other alternatives to revenue, or partnerships where we're not necessarily carrying the load of staff, or somebody else might be able to help staff pieces. One of the things I was curious about, and I bet you it's in the data someplace, but I'm looking at some of these numbers and just recognizing, on this food for thought chart, which is helpful, and we're looking at, I appreciate being able to see the number of participants that are impacted in these different areas. So for instance, when we're talking about cost recovery in the private or semi-private instruction, we're only talking about 39 participants.
Right.
And so, how much time do we want to spend on, and so I'd assume the revenue is proportionate to that, but maybe not. And so that might not have a huge budgetary impact compared to The last column, which has 8,703 participants for drop-in or monitored access, where, you know, the difference there is less, it's only 34%, but the budgetary impact, I would imagine, would be quite a bit higher. So do you have the actual dollar numbers that are represented in these categories?
I do.
Okay.
Yep, and
Yeah.
that's one of the piece of information that I'll be sharing. You'll get a spreadsheet with more tabs than you know what to do with. So yeah, you can play around, explore, and dive into those numbers, and then help us as we move on the next steps.
Yeah.
But I think that's a really important point, because when you look at that continuum, it doesn't, I mean, it's great, but it doesn't tell the full. If you only look at that, you're not going to make great decisions, because some of the programs that are reflected aren't as widely participated. So if you make them a higher cost recovery goal, well, that's fine and dandy, but it's not necessarily going to impact our overall sustainability as much as it might seem.
Right, and I think there's the return from a financial perspective, right? But we
Right.
also have our mission return on investment
Yep.
for our mission, and that largely relates to the number of people that are served through one of our programs. Or if it's less people, maybe we're looking at that we want to serve more marginalized people, like the
Yeah.
senior population, for
Yeah.
instance. Yeah.
No, sorry. So the 110% recovery, that's just the company name. No. So we're looking at, basically looking at each specific program that we offer and figuring out the actual true cost of offering that program, and knowing that if we don't charge for that program, we're going to be 100% relying on the subsidy that we receive from taxes. So then it's figuring out, okay, we obviously can't. Yes. We obviously can't just rely on that, because we won't have enough money to offer other programs. So then it's figuring out, okay, what is the actual, for this specific program, how much should we be charging to operate that program, and realizing that there's things in our mission or things in our purpose or our nature. Sure. Yeah, I think
If everybody pays their taxes.
we're expecting an increase, and we're not sure how stable that is for the long term, but yeah, with the growth of, I mean, every time there's this isn't necessarily on topic, but every new home that's developed within the district boundaries, that's good for us, because it brings new people here, and it also helps generate more revenue from our tax subsidy. Yeah.
Sue, you had a question?
So I wanted to not forget, you know, considering going after those areas, those communities that currently aren't in our district, and what that might, you know, and maybe that, I don't know what I'm trying to say, like a burden sharing, you know, so instead of them having to pay higher fees, they're paying a more consistent fee, but maybe that'll increase their participation. But my other comment was, so I need to just clarify on the private, semi-private information, are we talking about 2019 before Carolyn started?
Yeah.
Because, so that information is something different
Correct.
than anything with Carolyn, because I think that we have such a potential positive with her and some of the opportunities we have with swimming.
Yep, you're exactly right. So, I mean, that's one way of really examining how the data maybe didn't work in our favor, right? Because in 2019, we weren't able to offer any personal training because of COVID, and we didn't have a very robust private swim lesson program. And now we've already tripled, like, our best year ever in private swim lesson revenue because of
Right.
the staff that we have and the the popularity of that program right now. So, yeah, I think we're going to need to kind of continue working with these numbers and sort of evaluating with a careful lens.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah.
Kind of in point to what you were mentioning about tourists, something that I've often mentioned that I kind of would like to see developed is my mom lives in Crooked River Ranch community, and they have a community pool, and the local, Airbnbs and vacation rentals, that's the word, they can purchase a pass to leave in their vacation rental for those users to go and use the pool. And it's a premium cost, but they can use that to advertise to bring in people. I would love to see us implement some sort of program like that where we can, pass that cost onto the tourists and bring them in, and also offer a benefit to our community by, hey, you can come use the pool, and it's a little, cherry on the top for all these vacation rentals. I think that would be kind of a fun program.
Yeah.
Totally
That's actually
agree.
something I think maybe Celeste or someone else has, we've talked about a few times, like the Sun River model.
Right.
What's that? Oh, I'm sorry. I feel like I've talked about it with like multiple people, but I'm sorry. But yeah, I think it's, I wish.
Getting it off the ground, I think, would be challenging.
Yeah, and I don't know Crooked River Ranch's facilities. I'm familiar with Sun Rivers and some of the other ones. There's a little bit, probably more of a wow factor with some of their facilities, but it doesn't mean that we couldn't offer a membership option for those folks, because I think we're providing some really cool stuff, especially with the SRC when we're up and running fully.
Crooked River Ranch is just an outdoor pool.
Okay. Where, is that in Bend, or where is that?
Terrebonne, north
Okay.
of Redmond.
So
Hold on.
one of my questions about next steps, so one is, I'm super interested in being involved in this discussion, because I do think
Yeah.
this is helpful to thinking about the SRC and best and highest use. So I think, and factoring in the cost of that facility, because you obviously didn't have that in 2019 either.
Yeah.
I'm also interested in whether or not you have the tools to do your own cost recovery analysis at this point, or would it be dependent on continuous work with this contractor?
Yeah, I think, so we have the spreadsheets which have the formulas built in. I would probably want to talk to them and just see, I guess, what would happen if we play around with that spreadsheet and put new data in. My sense in leading up to our agreement with them was that was kind of the point, is that now you have the template or you have the tools and you can make this work. But I also think having them kind of assist us in certain parts of this might be really worthwhile, and to me, well worth the investment.
I would, I agree with Celeste. This is an ongoing conversation. I would love to kind of see it kept under old business and just kind of touch base, and then maybe add it into some workshops.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Yeah. Through volunteers. Yeah. I think just my own personal experience, the challenge with volunteering versus having a paid employee is using volunteers to do work that a paid employee would do. So it would be finding those special things. I mean, we have a lot of volunteers at like our special events. Those are almost all volunteers. Yeah.
But I think well, first of all, thank you for following up and checking
Yeah.
on that, and appreciate it. And yeah, and I agree. I think looking for those opportunities where they exist and
Yeah.
maybe where it provides added value to the programming that we're having, and maybe you don't necessarily, because I do think there can be a problem with, what do they call it, when you make a volunteer redundant to a staff position. There are some problems from employment terms, but yeah. Right. I agree, and making those
Like Thursday.
publicly-
Like Thursday, you can come and help me promote,
And me.
feed people.
But I
I'll be
do
there
think
soon.
there's even places, including with the SRC, especially when we have things like open gym, it doesn't hurt to have more people there to monitor or hang out and do lessons on the side or whatever. I mean, I don't know if there are spaces where having more volunteers only
Well, the turkey
adds
trot,
value to the
we're,
experience, yeah.
I'm using my ham radio, but I'm paired with a volunteer who's going to be learning what I do to decide if he's going to go forward and get his ham license. And so there are things that we can do. I know Skylar talked about 4 shifts on Thursday, to help out, to feed the homeless. And I think that's,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
How to volunteer for the Park and Rec District.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we have like a volunteer coordinator?
Yeah, it's Melissa.
Okay.
She's got about 14 hats, but that's one of them. So every time we have a special event or a need for volunteers, Melissa works through a volunteer call list or a list that she has. All of our scholarship recipients
Yeah.
are asked to volunteer every quarter. So that's typically where she starts, but then there's a list of other folks that aren't necessarily scholarship recipients, and she just, a lot of time that works out great. And she works really hard to develop those relationships out in the community to get people to volunteer, like the ham radio folks or other folks that you'll see if you're around on Thursday.
Another fun one is the high school clubs, the key clubs and stuff come down and help out with events. So it's good to see
well,
the,
heck, if you're looking for something, I'll take you for Aspire. Aspire and CERT. So,
it's a high school program.
yeah.
Okay, any further discussion on the 110 cost recovery, or we're gonna move right along to the
Do we-
executive director?
Do we all 5 get to be involved, or do you have to just take 2 of us?
I think this is gonna be one of those things that we just continue to add to board meetings and workshops and just continue
Perfect.
to discuss.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think we all need to be involved, and staff.
Yeah.
And,
So I think the next steps, I guess, without knowing exactly, is for me to send out all of the materials that we have and for you to be able to look at them on your own. I'd really like to develop a spot on our website for some of these materials to live so that the public can start to digest them if they so choose. And then probably some sort of a combined meeting with some representation from staff in key areas as well as the board. So that would probably be an upcoming meeting, but glad we were able to kind of start talking about this tonight. And
So our December workshop is for the SRC planning process. So
correct.
maybe a January workshop would be,
Yeah,
yeah.
you're jumping ahead on the agenda, but okay.
I am not.
All right.
All right, you're back at the wheel.
Sure. So I'll try to be brief here on just a couple of items to share, some good things that have happened. We had our shutdown just for 3 days right after our October board meeting. Because I was attending a conference at that time, I feel silly and sheepish about presenting that we did all these great things because I wasn't really able to do very much of anything. But Levi, Justin, their teams worked really hard for those 3 days. I would say the biggest things that we got done, if you haven't been around the natatorium, would be a deep clean of the locker rooms, deep clean of the pool deck. We did a lot of touch-up paint on the inside of the building. We removed the learner pool gutters and painted them a different color, a color that's going to wear a little bit better. And I'm really happy with how it looks in there. Cleaned the boilers, pressure washed the outside of the building and sidewalks, replaced shower grout in the locker rooms, painted the men's locker room, and then installed new soap dispensers in the locker rooms and natatorium bathrooms. So pretty good list for 3 days, and we had a couple of staff that were unfortunately out sick, so lots of great things got done. We are looking to have a shutdown of a week in 2022. It'll be around that same time of the year, end of October-ish.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
For when scheduling that? Can we look at the school district's calendar and not schedule it for in-service days?
Okay, when does the school district calendar come out?
I don't know, but I'll ask.
All right, well, you're behind the 8 ball already, so. Other things, I know I brought this up, shared a little bit of information at the last meeting, and I know we have a couple of folks that were interested, or maybe at least one that was, and one that was definitely not interested because of travel concerns, and that's okay. I know that conference registration for SDAO will be opening the first of the month in December, and from my experience, it sells out quickly and rooms block off pretty quickly. So Mike, I'm planning on you attending, I think as you said, but if there's other directors that would like to attend either partial or the full conference, please let me know. Wanted to report on a couple of special events that have happened or are upcoming. We hosted our pickleball tournament a couple of weeks ago on Veterans Day weekend. It was really awesome. We had over 50 teams and a little bit of profit from it, but I think just having people in the SRC and having a kind of a great mix of local folks, but also visitors from Seattle, Bend, Portland area. And we have our contractor that we work with. Their company is called Pickleball is Great, that hosts the tournament for us. Oh, I lost it. There we go. So that was awesome. And we actually had Erica's mom and dad both won certain divisions that they participate in. They're both really great pickleballers. So really, really cool event. We're looking at maybe hosting another tournament, obviously next year around that time, but we may do an additional tournament in the spring once the PBL season has put to bed a little bit. And then as far as Thanksgiving, in a couple of days, we have over 100 people registered for Turkey Trot, which is great. We typically, what's that?
104 now.
104 now. Yeah, we typically get about a 30% increase on the day of. So if we get to that 140 or 150 mark, I can't remember what our largest Turkey Trot has ever been, but I feel like we might be getting pretty close. So thank you to those that are going to be participating or volunteering. And then later that day, we're hosting our to-go Thanksgiving meal here at the Bob Chisholm. So looking forward to that. The last item I had is was able to meet with the Sip and Savor Committee, which is a joint fundraiser held by the foundation, and the Seaside Rotary Foundation. And we decided to make a couple of changes for the 2022 event. We did have a reserved date and time scheduled at the convention center, but because of some of the concerns with COVID and with restaurants not knowing exactly their staffing levels right now, as well as the time that we had was on February 13th, which is the Sunday before Valentine's Day. We were really worried that we might not get great participation from some of our local restaurants. So we're moving the Sip and Savor to May 1st, and we're actually going to move locations to have it at the SRC. We think it may be just a 1-year change. We have a date at the convention center for the following year, but felt like we could show off the building in a fun way, and also maybe if Sip and Savor is a little bit smaller, it fits that space a little bit more. So working on some of the details for that, but wanted to see if you could put that on your calendars, and I'll get you more information as we go along. The last thing, and it's really under calendar items, is that number 12B, that board workshop. I know, I think we're pretty confirmed on the date, but I was not sure about the time. Typically when we've had workshops, we try to have those a little bit earlier. So will 4 o'clock or 4:15 work? I'm not sure, but wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to confirm that.
Yeah, I know Erica said 4:15 worked for her. How about you, Sue?
I'm good. I've got it on the calendar.
Yeah, Mike?
4:15 works?
4:15 work for you? Yeah. All right, 4:15.
Sounds
Sold.
good. That's it for me, unless there's questions.
I want to ask, the Sip and Savor, was it going to be on a Sunday, which is May 1st?
Yeah, at least for the last few years, it's been held on a Sunday. The Sunday that we had reserved at the convention center was February 13th. It seems to be a good time of the week for restaurants to get away in that afternoon time slot. So that's when we'll plan on having it again.
It just sounds like a really good idea.
Thank you.
With that change.
Yeah, I think so too. I can say, sorry, one of the reasons why we need to have the event and why I was really hoping to not have to cancel it again is like our foundation financials are strong and secure, but we have not having to be able to have that event for 2 consecutive years. It's made a dent in our ability to give scholarships and provide funding to the district in other ways. So really important that we pick that back up and try to work hard at helping bolster the foundation financials.
Any questions, or should we move on to board comment? Moving on, Sue?
I have so much, that I'm thinking about. So what I want to say is I'm so grateful to be part of this group. I had a conversation with Skylar today where I mentioned, you could replace me, and he was like, no. So, and I know I'm elected, so I wasn't really serious, but I had thought about it before. But anyway, I simply, I'm so proud of the work we do and the fact that we're reaching out to serve our community. And I think that gets forgotten, that service, that people are actually out there trying to give back. It's always, in this cutthroat world and where people don't trust each other, and there's always, like, what's your motive? I think that what we offer is so honest, and I think sometimes people are just surprised. And I think it would be nice to restore that type of faith. And maybe we just keep doing what we're doing, and that's how that kind of message gets done. I look at the thriving community of people who work with this, with Sunset Empire and Sunset Pool and the facilities, and the dedication that they have to bring the best they can to the children and to every age from infant to geriatric. It's inspiring, and sometimes we overlook that. And I think at this time of year where we stop and count our blessings, it's nice to be able to look at the community agencies, not just Sunset Empire, but that's what we're talking about tonight. And I'm just so grateful to be part of a program that gives back the way it does. And I think we do nothing but offer whatever we can to help our community. And so I want to just mention I'm excited and at the same time, careful about the swim volunteer and swim opportunities regarding our USA Swimming. I think we have an excellent base of swimmers, and I think it's exciting to look at offering more, but I think we need to balance that with, making sure that our swimmers know this is fun. And someday, for those swimmers who've learned that it's fun, like my daughter did, then you can go further. But don't forget the basics, that it is supposed to be fun. And I'm excited about opportunities that will bring in the next year, but I also want to balance that with looking at making sure the sport is fun, the way it was for my daughter as she grew up. I think the opportunities that we have for SRC, I think, and I realize I'm speaking, so I'm going to be quiet now. I'm simply grateful for the number of opportunities, the programs like this 110% cost recovery. It's inspiring, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to move forward and watch how we can help our community. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sue. Celeste?
So as we roll into the Thanksgiving holiday, I'd like to acknowledge the Clatsop and Chinook people who were original custodians of the land that we're privileged to live on and host the activities of the Park and Rec District on. I'd also like to express gratitude to Skylar and the staff of the Park and Rec District, particularly for the special care and attention that they provide to individual and families who struggle during this holiday season.
Thank you, Celeste. Mike?
It's hard to top that. Hard to top that. I'm really pleased to be here, and I don't know, it's really something, going through the re-election last year and everything. I think it took its toll on me a little bit, but I'm glad to be here with such a fine group, and I'm very pleased of the job Skylar's doing and that staff is doing, and the leadership that we're showing the community. I think we're doing a pretty good job. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. In the spirit of thankfulness, I too would just like to express my thankfulness for serving on this board with all of you, and having the support of the community. I think that's incredibly important. I am very thankful for what our district offers this community. I think it plays a very important role, and I'm very glad to be a part of supporting it. Thank you, Skylar, for your work on the 110% and staff. I look forward to the future using that information. I think it's going to be vital to our district. And I would just like to invite can the community to please join us on Thursday for a free meal. What the time is between 12 and 2 p.m. at the Bob Chisholm. With that, meeting adjourned.
I think since I got here, yeah.